Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of WALB News 10. I'm Jim Wallace.
And I'm Carla Heath Sands. It may be hard to believe, but it's been exactly 1 year since Hurricane Michael ravaged southwest Georgia, Florida, and parts of the Carolinas.
Hurricane Michael was swirling at 160 miles per hour when it slammed into the Florida Panhandle. That's a Category 5 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Michael was one of the worst recorded storms in modern history. It's one of only 4 Category 5 hurricanes on record to ever hit the U.S. mainland. The last one was Hurricane Andrew, which hit South Florida and Louisiana back in 1992.
Now, the storm passed over western Cuba as a Category 2 hurricane before making landfall near Mexico Beach and the Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. It resulted in 16 deaths and $25 billion in damage in the U.S.
Now, over the next hour, we're going to look back at that devastation Hurricane Michael left across southwest Georgia.
It looked like God had stuck his arm out and just swung it across a forest of trees and just laid them all down.
And highlight the lessons that we learned from the storm.
You will hear inspiring stories of hope that emerged through the destruction.
Even in the midst of tragedies, there are good things that come out of that situation.
As strangers came together to help their neighbors in need.
For the WALB First Alert Weather Team, Hurricane Michael was a storm that they will never forget. Now looking back, they say the experience was a defining moment in their careers. In the days leading up to Hurricane Michael's landfall, WALB News 10's First Alert Weather Team knew southwest Georgia was in for a massive weather event.
It was coming through southwest Georgia. And again, I think the only thing that we weren't sure about was how strong it was.
Problem with this storm in itself, it was so massive and it was moving very fast.
2 days out, the First Alert Weather Team was sending out the warning.
This is borderline Category 5.
While also preparing for coverage during the hurricane.
We strategized what we were going to do and to keep our viewers safe at home.
The weather team used every platform to pass along the National Hurricane Center's forecast and warn what people had to do to protect their lives.
When you see terms like catastrophic damage, there will be a loss of life, then you want to make sure that people are aware of what to expect and that they are prepared.
The weather team says most South Georgians heeded the warnings, but some disagreed.
We did get phone calls into the newsroom 2 days prior to the storm saying, you know, why are you all, using this language? This is just going to be like another Irma.
I still think there was a minority who believed that it wasn't going to be as bad as we had forecast.
We are hearing what you're hearing outside. The winds are howling, the rain is coming down in sheets.
But the hurricane forecast was chillingly correct. Michael hit the Panhandle as a Category 5 and roared into South Georgia at least a Category 3. Power losses prevented reliable information.
We never got an accurate reading of the wind speeds in Albany. And I don't think we got accurate wind speed readings almost across most of southwest Georgia.
Yolanda, Chris, and Bradford stayed on the air most of the day and the night as Hurricane Michael roared through South Georgia. Now here at our Channel 10 studio, when it hit, the roof tiles above us were shaking and slamming back and forth, made a deafening roar inside the studio. These lights were swaying back and forth. There was a lot of dust, but our meteorologists stayed on the air even as their own safety was in question.
More debris was coming down. We also had a water leak toward the green screen eventually. So it was scary in here because we didn't know.
It was frightening in here to keep hearing the shingles on the roof up and down and persistently, and you heard the wind outside. The rain was just really pounding away at the building, but we are here to make sure that viewers are safe.
The weather team broadcast throughout the day, night, and into the next day before leaving the Weather Center for their first look at what Hurricane Michael left.
I had never seen anything like it. Trees were down, power lines down everywhere, power poles snapped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing as I drove home.
Over the next few days, many viewers meeting our weather team would thank them for their coverage, saying it saved lives.
People would hug you, and that probably happened for you too. So they were, a lot of people were very thankful for our coverage and just preparing them for what was about to come.
They were just grateful that we gave them a lead warning and that we kept them abreast of what was happening during the entirety of the storm moving across South Georgia.
Hurricane Michael was a determining event for WALB News 10 and the weather team. One event that points out why their training and expertise is vital to South Georgia. Our meteorologists say these are the lessons learned from Hurricane Michael. Prepare. Have emergency supplies ready ahead of time. Now, that includes a NOAA weather radio. Plan. Make an emergency plan. Make sure your family knows what that plan is. And sign up now for emergency alerts. Our First Alert weather team will send you alerts through our WALB First Alert Weather app. It is free in the App Store and it's simple to download. We'll let you know the moment any severe weather threatens our area.
Southwest Georgia experienced an unprecedented catastrophe when Hurricane Michael hit. Now, in those moments of destruction, one precious life was taken in Southwest Georgia. Our Paige Dyer sat down with the Radney family, who says they still long for the little girl they lost.
It's almost been a year since 11-year-old Sarah Radney passed away. To this day, Roy and Amber Radney say they're constantly reminded of Sarah.
I try to keep Sarah in a good memory, you know.
She's involved every day. She's there. She's involved.
Yeah, I talk to her 50 times a day.
Roy was Sarah's stepfather. He says talking about what happened hasn't come easy.
For the first couple months, every time I thought of it, which was a million times a day, you know, it would take my breath, my heart would sink.
Sarah was at Roy's parents' home in Donaldsonville during Hurricane Michael when a carport blasted through their home, striking Sarah in the head. She wouldn't survive her injuries. And when the Radneys arrived, Roy says he couldn't bring himself to go inside.
I didn't want to be there. It was a place, it was the last place I ever wanted to be at that moment.
But this wound heals a little more every Sunday when they visit Sarah's grave.
I love talking about her. I love remembering her and looking at her stuff. I look forward to it every week. That's kind of my thing.
Her grave, decorated with the brightest flowers and her favorite animal.
There's a little scarecrow and a pumpkin out there, so we try to keep her up to date, you know what I mean?
A year later, and they say their family is closer than ever, but they say it couldn't have happened without the tremendous amounts of love and support.
Expose yourself to as much kindness and giving as you can, because especially in a trying time like that where all you see is hurt and you're kind of angry, you need the good.
In Cairo, Paige Dyer, WALB News 10.
Kindness that shone through the most in the wake of Hurricane Michael. For some, it was a calling to help their community. For others, it was a call of duty.
Next, meet the men and the women of the National Guard who worked tirelessly for weeks to bring a sense of security to South Georgia.
What I loved most was seeing that, you know, people of all different races, different backgrounds, rallying together to help one another. Like, I really do believe that Hurricane Michael brought unity, not only to Albany, but to all the counties that, you know, we covered. It was, you know, folks from Albany going to Early County, or folks from Bainbridge going to Seminole County. Like, you know, it was a South Georgia effort. Everyone helped one another.
Welcome back to Hurricane Michael Through the Storm.
Moments after Hurricane Michael devastated Mitchell County, linemen hit the pavement, working around trees, down power lines, and crumbled buildings. Hundreds of linemen and volunteers poured into South Georgia to help in the recovery.
This is our area where we stock donations that come from the community. Not only from our community, but we get donations from all over Georgia. Anything from toothbrushes, toothpaste, to chapstick, sunscreen, bug spray.
You know, little things to me, they mean a lot. You get down little stuff like toothpaste and toothbrushes. This means a lot, you know, being able to get up in the morning, brush your teeth, and, you know, take what kind of shower you can.
One thing that's amazed me is every night I come in and see the community. People come, you know, from everywhere, from young age to older, just here working, just helping, you know. Most of them that you talk to, they were without power, you know.
We've had some tremendous support from the community. A lot of volunteers are coming out every morning before 5 a.m. and they're just proud to be able to do what they can to keep these guys fed.
I think that all of the volunteers that have been involved in this can can feel very good about the fact that we've been able to bring a little bit of joy into lives of the linemen that have made this sacrifice to be here in Mitchell and Baker and Worth and Daugherty County during the storm restoration. It's just who we are, and it makes us feel like we're giving back to our community to be able to support these linemen.
The Albany chain gang helped hundreds across South Georgia clear through wreckage after the storm, and they say there's still more work to be done. The group tells us they got over 3,000 phone calls from people in need of help. They worked on over 450 damaged homes from last October until June of this year, chopping and clearing massive trees. The volunteers clocked over 5,000 hours. They say although they also suffered during the storm, it was important to help those who needed it most.
The veterans, the people that have, given their lives to our country, the people that are lower income, that they don't have any other means to be able to help themselves. That's really, I think our heart and our passion to be able to go and help them and be able to take care of them and make sure that they're okay, because they don't have the resources to do that themselves.
Right now, they have less than 30 people who are still in need of help. We're told that they will resume assisting victims later this fall when the weather cools off.
Hurricane Michael left a lot of physical damage across the community, but as we continue to clear away the debris, psychiatrists say it's also important to take stock of the emotional damage that storm could have caused.
Health leaders with the Daugherty County school system say they saw an influx of students with storm-related anxiety after Michael. They say students showed signs of stress, anxiety, and trauma. Many were without water and electricity, or they were displaced. Behavioral specialists say they used various platforms to help students share their stories and process the trauma so they could begin to heal.
It's a matter of helping students regain that equilibrium, that sense of normalcy, giving them an opportunity to let them come back to a safe place. Some students' homes were totally destroyed and unlivable now. So school helped to create an anchor for them.
Health leaders say they have already seen the same fears and behavioral changes in kids this hurricane season. Right now, they're trying to help students cope and hope that they learn not every storm will bring about destruction.
It may just be rain showers with some thundering and lightning. Of course, you're going to have some tense students, some stressed students. So just helping them to relax, teaching them mindfulness activities, teaching them ways to relax, helping them understand that being at school is a safe place.
Behavioral specialists recommend talking to a psychiatrist if you see signs of storm-related anxiety or trauma in your children, or if you experience it yourself.
I think we can all agree Hurricane Michael left a deep, lasting impact on everyone around us.
For our reporters, it was a true test of their abilities.
I think this station works as a team. It's a family. And, moving forward in that's the best way that I could describe it.
When we come back, a one-on-one interview with WALB News 10's General Manager Bruce Austin about the role Hurricane Michael played in shaping young journalists.
And so having that kit together, having water, having food that you can eat that's not going to go bad for a couple weeks. I mean, it sounds extreme, but we found out in Seminole County it took a couple weeks to get power back, and so it's not extreme. And having a way to get notified too, because this was something we had prepared for several days.
Welcome back to Hurricane Michael Through the Storm.
The National Weather Service is the government agency in charge of forecasting weather for the United States. They tracked Michael from when it initially formed to when it finally fell apart. Mark Wool is the warning coordination meteorologist for their Tallahassee field office, which serves most of southwest Georgia. He calls Hurricane Michael an unprecedented event. He also tells us the biggest lesson their office learned was the need to have better communication, especially with senior citizens.
Making sure people understand that, look, we're going to have the most likely forecast out there, but you have to focus on and prepare for what we call the, quote, reasonable worst case scenario, because Michael was the worst case scenario.
Wool says one of the most important factors is preparing ahead of time. That includes packing that emergency supply kit so you can evacuate at a moment's notice. These are the 15 basic supplies the American Red Cross says you should pack. Water, 1 gallon per person per day. You need to have a 3-day supply for an evacuation and a 2-week supply for home. Food, non-perishable items like peanut butter and canned meat. It's the same amount as water, a 3-day supply for an evacuation and 2-week supply for home. Pack flashlights and batteries. Always pack extra batteries. A battery-powered or a hand-crank radio. The Red Cross recommends the NOAA weather radio. Deluxe Family First Aid Kit, at least a 7-day supply of medications and medical items. Sanitation and personal hygiene items, including toilet paper, trash bags, and sanitizer. An emergency blanket. You'll want one of those for each member of your family. A multi-purpose tool. Cell phones with chargers. They could be a track phone you keep in the pack or an extra charger for your smartphone. Extra cash. Maps of the area, family and emergency contact information, which should include the phone numbers and addresses, and copies of any personal documents. That includes a list of any medication or pertinent medical information, proof of your address, your passports, birth certificates, insurance policies, and the lease or deed to your home. It's also important to remember to pack for your pets. We broke down the items you should include for them over on our website. Just look for the Hurricane Michael tab at the top of the page at WALB.com.
Here at WALB, we juggle preparing for severe weather in our personal lives while ensuring our viewers get the information they need.
Our general manager, Bruce Austin, says it's that balance that tested the WALB News 10 team. Our Bobby Portavant sat down with him to look back at the storm that created such historic havoc for so many in the South.
We knew, this wasn't the time really to just, relax, but to stay on guard and to make sure everybody truly were safe out wherever they were.
WALB News 10's General Manager Bruce Austin recounts how the station pulled together during Hurricane Michael. He says surviving disasters like Michael, you learn a few things about technology and how it's a very fragile connection between us and the outside world.
I'll tell you, the first thing you learned in a hurricane is that cell towers don't work. Communication is of utmost importance in our business. What we did find is that a broadcast TV station is extremely important today, and in my mind, it will be important for years to come.
He remembers the WALB News 10 team that tirelessly and through Michael's fury provided storm coverage through direct contact with first responders and many others.
One of the things that I really saw out of the MMJs especially is how quick they grew up. We do have a lot of young MMJs here, a lot of young reporters. And, when after that storm, it's almost like they took a step forward in their career a little bit because they know now how to do things and to stay safe, but also they know what their main job is, and that's to inform our public about things that are going on around them.
One of his proudest moments comes from the First Alert team that saved lives.
They sacrifice their family time to protect our people. So to me, they are first responders, our meteorologists, hands down. They warn people, they save people's lives. So when I look back and reflect on the performance of these guys, there's no way I can feel like we did anything incorrectly. I think this station works as a team. It's a family. And moving forward in that's the best way that I could describe it, is that we're moving forward as a family here. We're not an individual system.
In Albany, Bobby Portavant, WALB News 10.
Bruce Austin officially took over as the general manager January 1st. Before that, he was WALB's general sales manager.
Understanding the true cost of the storm will take years to fully grasp. Straight ahead, the devastating blow Hurricane Michael caused to the agriculture industry and the delay many farmers say cost them even more.
Farmers are all built on faith. Everything they do, because of the economics of what the American farm is built on faith. So to have something like this come along is, devastating. There was no doubt about it. They lost everything they had in the fields because of Hurricane Michael.
Welcome back. You are watching a WALB special, Hurricane Michael Through the Storm.
Some people lost their family homes, precious memories, and sense of safety. But there's one impact of the storm that carried a much heavier blow to the entire state.
Georgia's top cash crops were ravaged. Farmers lost billions. Many say they will never recover. From peanuts to pecans and vegetables, the economic damage racks up to nearly $2.5 billion in Georgia alone. Cotton is the top row crop in the state. The Georgia Department of Agriculture estimates less than 15% of it had been harvested before the storm. Coming off the heels of Hurricane Irma, farmers hope to use the 2018 growing season to bounce back.
Some agriculture experts argue that pecan farmers were impacted even more than the cotton industry. It takes at least a decade for pecan trees to get back in production.
Since many farmers were forced to wait 11 months for the government to release federal disaster relief funding, they say they are now another year behind.
Now, our Marilyn Parker shows us how one farmer in Mitchell County was able to move forward despite the delay in funding.
Because if you do this,
Miley Adams calls it the perfect storm.
it was just a mess.
His farm faced Hurricane Michael's fierce wind speeds whipping through his crops in Mitchell County.
And all that canopy on the trees and all, it just caught the whole tree. It would bring it over and just bring it down.
Clearing out his 600 acres of cotton, reducing valuable pounds of pecan to useless pieces.
Probably the most devastating storm I've ever been in.
Many farmers grew desperate for government disaster relief.
It's getting a little bit precarious. The younger farmers, they need some help. We all need some help.
1 year later, he's restored 4,000 young pecan trees on his land.
Most of these older trees were anywhere from 25 to about 75 years old. And so that's a lot of history that's gone.
He says stories of triumph will come from what's planted here today.
We're starting with new trees, new varieties, and of course that's the name of the game anyway.
Plants with higher production value and resistance to diseases, he says, will make all the difference.
Even in the midst of tragedies, there are good things that come out of that situation.
In Mitchell County, Marilyn Parker, WALB News 10.
Roughly 80 counties across the state are eligible for federal relief funds. Applications opened last month for Wildfire and Hurricane Indemnity Program Plus. It's more commonly referred to as WIP Plus. Details on how you can apply are posted in this story on our website. Look for that under the Hurricane Michael tab at the top of the homepage at WALB.com.
Don't go anywhere. We've got a deeper look at what changes emergency agencies enacted in the aftermath of Hurricane Michael.
There's no amount of planning that fixes losing everything. But what you can do is figure out what the best available workarounds might look like.
That's Jenna Chang, an EMA specialist for Daugherty County.
She walks us through how Michael shaped their emergency response plans and the crucial lesson they learned from the storm.
The community support, rallying around each other for those highest impacted by the storm. You've got to really see the humanity aspect of South Georgia and the people coming together and helping one another, physically, emotionally, and I think that's one of the most rewarding things is seeing after tragedy, people coming together in your own community and helping one another.
Welcome back to Hurricane Michael Through the Storm.
A year later, and the toll Michael took on the Albany community is still prevalent. You can see it in the tarps still on roofs and the stumps still in yards.
Our Grayson Passmore tells us the story of a woman still waiting for home repairs.
It's where I met my husband at Georgia. He and I both went to Georgia.
Pictures of Jimmy Matthews, like the portrait here, hang throughout Dee Matthews' house.
I met my husband, Jimmy, and that was Katie bar the door. It was love at first sight, I guess. He had beautiful blue eyes.
Dee lost Jimmy 7 years ago to Parkinson's disease. Memories of their life together are framed throughout her house. There's no doubt Dee loved Jimmy, and it's also evident of her love of something else.
The Dan McGill, our famous tennis coach.
The photos of her, Jimmy,
and then the one of Coach Dooley and Eric.
And their beloved school.
But I've got missing several that go over there.
Were almost lost forever last year.
We go through a lot of, I think, thunderstorms and heavy rainstorms here in South Georgia, but nothing compared to that.
Matthew's house looks as if Hurricane Michael just passed it by, but 1 year later and there's a rather large problem still sitting in her yard. these huge tree stumps.
But that's what I'm waiting for now, is to get my insurance coverage to get those trees out of my yard.
Matthew's home lost a few shutters, her pictures came down, and 2 trees were uprooted. A stump in the front yard and back serve as reminders still.
And so there have been lots of people that had a lot more damage than I did. So I guess basically I'm on the bottom of the list, which is fine.
Matthews has spent the past 365 days thanking God he left her home as unscathed as it was. And she's been thanking her Albany neighbors for their help after the storm.
I think this community is just wonderful doing that. When the need comes, we show. And it was great.
Now, after a year of construction and rebuilding, the memories are going back up on the wall.
We had some beautiful autograph pictures that we wanted to save for our grandchildren, you know, because they're dog fans too.
In Albany, Grayson Passmore, WALB News 10.
Matthews and others like her just have to wait until insurance comes through and until construction companies are no longer backed up.
In Bainbridge, a joint government office is working to get rid of homes that serve as reminders of Michael. There are several abandoned homes like this one throughout Decatur County. Someone lived here at the time of the storm but was forced to move. A fallen tree made it unlivable. The Bainbridge-Decatur County Marshal's Office wants to clean up those eyesores. They either get homeowners to demolish the buildings or let the local fire departments use them to train the firefighters.
You have investors that'll come in and they want to build houses, or people that, you know, want to move to our neighborhoods, and nobody wants to move to a neighborhood when you're going to live next door to this, or nobody wants to be the renter that lives next door and have to see or view that every day that they drive by.
The department has gotten rid of nearly 10 homes so far this year that were either damaged during the storm or dilapidated. Mock says his office has another 9 or 10 more homes on schedule to take care of in the next few months.
I think we can all agree that we hope South Georgia and the rest of the country never have to experience another storm like Hurricane Michael.
Absolutely. Now we have all of these stories and many more, as well as helpful tips on how you can prepare for natural disasters over on our website, WALB.com, and at the WALB News 10 app.
Thank you so much for watching.
Have a good night.
Thank you for watching WALB News 10's Hurricane Michael Through the Storm.